We have a kind of a short window today,
Yep,
but we wanted to go live because of the breaking news in Iran. Um, Thanks for joining first, first of all, and for being available. I
yeah, no
really
problem.
appreciate it. We know that Iran has responded. Can you tell us what's going on?
So right now, people, because this has recently happened, this is what we call in the military the fog of war. You have a lot of reports flying around, different sources, both conventional media, social media, etc. Here's what we know: Iran did target U.S. military bases. The one that is confirmed is Al Udeid Air Force Base right outside of Doha, Qatar. It is a base that I know very well. I had to go there about once a quarter for about 4 years. So
Wow.
it is the central air logistics hub in the Middle East. It's the largest base the Americans have in the Middle East, and it was targeted by Iran. Now, additionally, there are reports that Bahrain and Kuwait were also targeted by Iran. Let me be very clear. These three bases have one thing in common. They are the head of what we call the component commander
Hmm.
in the Middle East. So Al Udeid is the Air Force commander's base for the Middle East.
Uh-huh.
Bahrain is the headquarters of Fifth Fleet, the naval component in Central Command. And then Kuwait is the home of the Army or land component in the Middle East. So those three places were targeted. However, we have had varying reports on whether or not Kuwait and Bahrain were attacked. We do know for a fact that Al Udeid was attacked. Now, because these three places are important, there are significant air defenses that are in place, especially at Al Udeid. I personally had to go inspect those things at one point in my life. So
Okay.
the Iranians know that too. So there are many people who believe this is similar to the response they had when Soleimani was killed in 2020 by the
Right.
order of President Trump to knock down these things and say, okay, we responded, and trying to show their domestic audience that this, we did something to, the great Satan.
Sure. It was
There's
a way to save face,
right,
but not escalate beyond red lines.
right. But let me just throw one major caveat here that's different from 2020. And I was in the Middle East in 2020, and I had to recall my sailors because of this. 2025, the difference is there was not an active air war going on between Israel and Iran. I
Right.
mean, when I say active, as these strikes were happening, Israel was doing fixed wing attacks in Iran, and Iran was shooting missiles at Israel simultaneously. So, why do I bring this up? The messaging is important because that's what Tehran is trying to do for its people and the world to say, to be very blunt, that they're no punks. They're not getting punked on the international stage. But they picked targets that they know had a significant air defense in it. And so what Trump and everybody right now is saying, and it's funny how fast this spreads in the media, well, they're trying to save face, but not try to escalate. I completely disagree. We don't know
Wow.
yet.
Right.
We don't know yet. And part of it is because of the active air war that is going on while these missiles are being launched. Now, the other piece that people need to be very, very aware of is the risk of what we call miscalculation. The risk of miscalculation. For example, what if those missiles that were launched from Iran hit Al Udeid? One of the air defense batteries failed and it got through and it hit the base and killed Americans. That's a miscalculation if what is to be believed that they're just doing this to save face, right? Well,
Right. Well, let me ask you this though. What um I mean, it does seem like, the missiles were intercepted, correct? As far as we know.
as the first reports, yes, at least at Al Udeid, yes.
Could Iran have anticipated that those intercepted missiles? I mean, is this a thing? And I'm trying to get to why people believe that launching missiles at a US base is actually a way for Iran to save face and not escalate.
And And that is getting to my point.
Hmm.
It's That's a hell of a way to try to save face, to show strength,
Right.
targeting United States bases after Donald Trump specifically told you don't do it,
Yeah.
right? There are other ways they could have escalated, especially in the maritime sphere on the water, where, okay, you could, I don't know, hijack a merchant vessel. There are other things that you can do that are less decisive if it goes wrong than what you're talking about doing. So, but if you were going to shoot, that'd be the place that I would shoot, hoping things got knocked down, hoping the missiles
Right.
got that knocked down. And understand, people, we're talking about a bullet hitting another bullet tens of thousands of feet in the air. It is science, and science can sometimes be wrong. Now, if you're going to base your diplomatic platform on science that can go askew in an active war zone, that's on you. But at the same time, Iran did notify Qatar that this was going to happen. That report has been verified,
Huh.
and notified Bahrain and Kuwait and all these other areas that this is going to possibly happen. The reason, though, I think is not because they were trying to be nice, but I think it's because they don't want their actions against the United States government to be misinterpreted as actions against the host nation's governments. They're trying to walk
Right.
two lines. Now, the ramifications of this are, in my humble opinion, very significant. Because again, this is not 2020. Air superiority, airspace, and things that are flying. Yeah. And you have now naval assets. You now have air assets that were not there that have now been brought into the environment. How can you start a diplomatic process with increasing forces and live ordnance flying? Okay. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. And based on the president of the United States, he's not going to be the first one to back down. And we have history of 40 years, 40 plus years. Iran's not going to be the first one. So this goes back to the issue that I was talking earlier this weekend about who's going to be the intermediary between these now one, two, and three nations that are proactively fighting at each other. The United States has said repeatedly the last 2 days that they are not at war with Iran. Well, unfortunately, Iran did not get the memo.
Right.
They didn't get the memo. The second we dropped the bomb on them, Iran was like, we're at war with the United States. And last I checked, it only takes one side to declare a war on someone.
Right.
So,
So, look, I mean, this has been a fever dream of Bibi Netanyahu for decades, this sort
yes,
of hot war. And he finally found somebody stupid enough to let him do it in Donald Trump. I wonder, you've talked about off ramps a lot. And the idea is that if you want peace, you have to provide your adversary with an off ramp, some way
exactly.
to de-escalate, some way to save face. Trump keeps saying he wants a total surrender, which is a weird thing to say, first of all, to a country. But does Trump have any? Are there any off ramps right now for Trump? And I'll ask the same question about Iran next.
Well, it depends. Is there an off ramp for Trump? No. Is there an off ramp for the president of the United States? Yes.
Mm,
Those are
mm,
two separate answers. Trump
interesting.
is not going to allow any way, shape, or form for his ego to be bruised or to be made fun of in the international sphere. Not after this. Not after the grandiose bombing of now it looks like a nuclear facility that has not been wiped out. Okay. And this is,
Yeah.
keep this in mind, this is all on the recommendation and the intelligence that was provided by a government that has been saying Iran is just days away from a nuclear weapon for the last 15 years. Okay.
Right.
Trump is trying to save as much face as possible. The president of the United States, however, will be the same ones to pull back and say we need to renegotiate and reopen negotiations on the nuclear deal now, and pick a
Right.
location and tell Israel, hey, you can keep doing this, but we're not going to help. We're going to go meet and try to end this diplomatically. That's what a president would do. But we're not dealing with the president. Do you think it's a coincidence that Barack Obama got that nuclear deal done, that both George W. and
Yeah.
H.W. Bush did not take the bait, that Clinton did not take the bait, that Biden did not take the bait? Democrats and Republicans did not take the bait to do this. They
No.
didn't. Okay.
I,
It's mind boggling that you got the one who's now changing all of that. And I don't see an off ramp for him from a political standpoint.
no.
He's already got MAGA trying to change the narrative. I don't see an off ramp for the United States right now because you're painted into a corner, right? If let's play this out for a second. let's say all the carrier strike groups leave and go home. All the air, the base, the Air Force bombers turn around, fly back to the continental 48. Okay, what changes? Nothing. Israel and Iran are still going to be shooting at each other, right? And you still got 40,000 service members that have American flags on their shoulders that'll still be there. Sun Tzu said, "Give your enemy an off ramp from day one," and apparently he missed that memo too.
Yeah, he just did not read it. I'm guessing. I have, just a sort of more general question as well, which is, you know, you resort to violence when it's the last
Mhm,
available option, right?
mhm.
And it is a tool to either stop a threat or to gain some other objective. What is to be? I mean, the threat, as we've known, is a farce, generally speaking. What else is there to be gained from any of this by the Americans? And I want to talk about what's to be gained, or where the Iranians sit as well, in this picture. But start with the Americans.
Well, what's to be gained here? Well,
It
before this happened, the concern has always been Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
Right,
Guess what? Today, the concern is still Iran gaining a nuclear weapon. The
of
only
course.
difference is now you have up to 70,000 service members that could be put at risk for this same thing that has not really changed. All you did was inflict damage and completely ruin diplomatic ties. Typically, you don't use violence to go to the negotiation table. You
No.
go to the negotiation table to avoid violence. Right now, the violent act of this weekend is now putting the world economy at stake because of the Straits of Hormuz are mined, which their parliamentary body has voted and a resolution to do. All of us, every American, every European, everybody around the world will share that pain. They'll share that pain because 20% to 25% of all the oil in the world go through that strait. Okay. The
Yep.
other piece of this is once you lay down mines or once you do missile strikes, it's hard to unring that bell.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if this happened to the United States of America, let's say, I don't know, pick a country, let's say Colombia or Venezuela hit us with multiple bombs and then said, "Hey, we want to come to the negotiation table to discuss this, that, and the other." There's not one American, whether you like President Trump or not, that's going to be like, "Yeah, we're going to do that."
No.
So, so of Iran, right?
Hmm.
Iran right now is fighting a two front war against the two major enemies that they see that is a direct threat to their existence.
Yeah.
Just like Israel has seen Iran as the biggest threat to their existence. The only difference is the United States has moved from a mediation standpoint to now an enforcer standpoint. And
Right.
enforcers don't negotiate. They don't.
Eh, Yeah, so I've been reading, catching up on my Robert McNamara lately, and
Yeah.
he saw Vietnam, or came to see Vietnam, as an absolute abject misunderstanding of another population, of another
Yes.
will, of another people,
Yeah.
and he had the ability, this sort of human innate ability, to reflect on his own actions, to change his mind. We're not in that place with Trump, so
No.
he will never understand another
No.
person or another country or another
No.
motivation
No.
enough to get out of this. So I wonder. You mentioned Iran being on its. You know, this threat is existential for the regime in Iran, and
Hmm.
I have family in Tehran right now,
Hmm.
and nobody's a fan of the regime.
Right.
Um, this feels like a terrible move to bomb a country into making them like you for some reason. I feel like there were a million other options on the table. Why this option from Trump?
I personally believe that Trump executed this option because he saw his poll numbers dwindling and he saw himself being slowly emasculated in the American public.
Hmm.
I think the combination of the terrible army parade, the counter protest of no kings, the complete botching of the tariff war that he started, the lack of deals that came from it on the international level, and the side eyeing that he got at the G7, you know,
Yeah.
where you saw those leaders look at him like, what the hell is wrong with him? The Italian president, she rolled her eyes. I mean, literally, they're looking at him
Yep.
like, what a joke. He sees all of that. And on his way to leave the G7 on his way to the White House, because to be completely honest, I don't think his handlers trusted him to stay in that environment without embarrassing himself further. How
Yeah.
do you, to be very blunt and honest, how do you reattach your balls? Do something hardcore military. Yeah, let's do that. And Bibi and the Mossad and all those profilers they have in Israel picked up the phone and was like, hey, I know we've been talking about this. Now's the time to do this.
Eh,
And and when he walked down and he did the announcement, he unlike Obama when he killed Osama bin Laden, when he had that operation under his order, it was Obama by himself. Trump needed the entourage.
yeah.
He needed the entourage behind him to look tough. And
Mhm.
it's the entourage that he thinks is something straight out of an episode of Mad Men, a bunch of sitting there tough suited white men walking down in the White House and be like, "We just kicked ass."
Yeah. For blonde mom in the chat just said all these men do is go to tanning salons and apply their makeup, which is yeah.
They put on more makeup than any woman I know. I
Oh my
mean,
god. It's
but not I
ridiculous.
mean, not
It's a
that
good
it
one for blonde
matters,
mom.
but if you're
Um,
but if this is if this is an exercise in projected masculinity, you just put 40 to 70,000 American service members who are really tough people in harm's way.
right.
In harm's way.
Well, I think there's also something to be said for the fact that diplomacy is quite hard and it takes
Very,
adults and it takes
very.
somebody, I heard somebody the other day say, I don't think Trump is stupid, but he's ignorant. And I think he's both stupid and ignorant personally. But I think the
Uh,
ignorance is
I,
the deadly part, is the deadly piece of this.
I think it's three. I think ignorance. I think stupid. Okay, I'm not one to bash anybody in that position, but I will say this: he's intellectually lazy.
Yes.
Most people that get to that level in anything, whether it's president, CEO, there's an intellectual curiosity that they have to pursue knowledge.
Yeah.
It's almost like his pursuit of knowledge ended at 17. He shut that off and then tries to create the world around him to match that version that he had at 17.
Right.
And the world continues to move fast. I mean, this man talked about tariffs back in the 90s, and people were like, yeah, you really can't do that in the 90s. He's still talking about it in 2025. And how's that helping the economy? We're going to see a shrinking, not, the 3% growth we're supposed to have, not happening, right?
Yeah.
Not happening. The only thing that's happening right now that he feels like he can control deals with his role as commander in chief. That is why you see him deploying Marines on the streets of Los Angeles. See, people have forgot about that. They're still there.
Yeah.
They're still there, sitting there scratching their asses, asking, why are we still here? And at the same time, having this strike that he was like complicated, beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Newsflash, people, United States military does complicated things. Don't pat us on the back for it. That's the job. That's the
Right.
job that we do. Okay. So the only things he can control is that military, and he's using it to project strength domestically, and he's using it to project strength internationally. The problem is the messaging of both are completely opposite. He looks like a weak dictator in the United States, and he looks like a feckless diplomat internationally.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
And a stunted
And no
17 year
one
old.
around him is telling him that. Hey,
Yep.
like, right. You think it's a coincidence that Bibi Netanyahu went out of his way to praise him like he was some 12-year-old that just finished a science project after the strikes? I have never, in the entire time of watching Netanyahu for going on 20 some odd years, see him profusely praise another leader like he did Donald Trump,
Yeah.
right? And this is the thing.
Because he knows how it works.
Right, exactly. They have a profile, a psychological profile on him that allowed him to manipulate the president to do something he could never do with any other president because it was a red line. And so I asked the American people, you know, elections have consequences. Got it. But this is going to go beyond Trump. There is that circle
Yep.
that still is there, that is feeding him to do these things. And once you lose prestige abroad, it takes a generation or more to get it back. And everything that has happened with the United States post World War II up until now is being erased in less than 6 months. 6 months ago, if you would have told someone we're going to have Americans starting a war or entering a war in the Middle East, everybody would have been like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Especially coming out of Trump's mouth. But here we are, 6 months after the election, and we have now 70,000, soon to be 70,000 troops in the Middle East with active strikes happening, and now military bases being hit by Iran.
I think that I think about this a lot. The sort of disbelief in the world is not because um, these things are hard to believe, but it's because any rational player would not play this game in this way,
No, no,
right? You think
no.
this is like you are winning this game. You are the superpower on the earth. All you have to do is not fuck it up. Except
We we
everything he's doing is fucking it up.
we literally are watching a real life game of Risk, and we've been winning for like 3/4 of the game, and then someone just kicked and threw the board up and was like,
Yeah,
"No, we're not playing anymore. We're going to do it this way." And you've got to ask yourself, what possible motivations
right.
does this man have that makes any sense rationally? You cannot tell me with a straight face that his things, what he's doing domestically, the immigration, the martial law, and what he's
Yep.
doing internationally, the stoking, I mean, doing the exact opposite of what a State Department would do, and now striking and now being struck back. Tell me how this makes America better than it was 6 months ago, 4 years ago, even.
It's threatening our safety, our economy, our standing abroad. And you're right, it's creating just an absolute mess that's going to take a very long time to put back together. Um,
When I'm watching Afghan interpreters being rounded up in ICE raids that literally put their lives on the line for
yeah,
American
yeah,
servicemen and women, and during the global war on terrorism, being shipped back to Afghanistan where it's a death sentence. It's a death sentence for them to
yeah.
go back. They chose to side with us, and we're sending them back. Okay, this is to me. This is the reason this is such a sensitive subject to me. Is I know people whose lives were saved by this, and it's a cross nexus between domestic policy and international policy. The man doesn't understand the Taliban that he let go, by the way, to
Yep.
go back to Afghanistan and undo everything that we did. That betrayal is now going to be the end of lives of people that chose America and the American dream. So, using that as the backdrop, why should anybody listen to us diplomatically in the Middle East based on those type of things? Why would they?
eh, Patently untrustworthy. And that we should get a couple of Terps on to talk. I think it would
Hmm.
be interesting.
Hmm.
It would be really interesting to get that perspective because I know a few of them myself, and their stories are wild, and they were ultimately helped by Marines and enlisted men
Yep.
and servicemen
Yep.
who were Trumpers, but
Yep.
who were very dedicated, would lay down their lives for their interpreters. Um,
Exactly. Because of what they put on the line.
they did every day. I mean, I know some that who had to move apartment to apartment once every week with their family because they were being hunted.
Yep.
Um, I have one last question, then we have to go. We have Jason
Hmm.
Crow, U.S. Rep from Colorado, coming up in about 5 minutes. He's a former Army Ranger and Bronze Star Medal recipient, so he's going to be a good guy to talk to about this as well. But I want to ask just quickly, if you can,
Hmm.
best case scenario, worst case scenario. What do we need to be looking for over the next week, 2 weeks, months, so on?
Best case scenario is okay. We knock down these missiles. People in the PIOC in the White House, Presidential Emergency Operations Center, will sit there and say, "Okay, they did their strike. Everybody, calm down. Just don't- We got to intercept this Israel, and Iran is running out of places to hide. It's mutually assured destruction if this keeps up."
Yep.
Okay, and then um also, I would say worst case scenario would be we choose to retaliate based on the strikes that killed nobody, and it continues to escalate, and then all of our air defense systems get saturated because of the inventory that Iran has, and now we're in a full blown war.
Yeah.
So we have some options here. It needs cool heads and egos to exit. Egos have to exit right now in
Right.
order to calm everybody down because everybody is on edge. I know for a fact someone sitting on a ship right now saw those missiles launch and was like, holy shit, we're going to general quarters because you don't know. So everybody needs to take a pause. And that's where leadership, a diplomatic leadership needs to come into play.
Yep. I gotta leave you. I gotta leave it there, Bobby.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
gonna. You're coming on the strategy session tomorrow night with Rick and Joe and Stuart, and we'll talk
Yep.
more about this. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. If there's more breaking news, we'll come live to you.
Thanks,
Thanks so
guys.
much, Bobby.
Mhm.